Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. My name is Roy Bensby, and I'm your host. And this week we have Elias Weiss Friedman, who is the photographer, president, and founder of the Dogist. And for those of you who don't know, the Dogist, it's a very successful Instagram page, and now also he's the author of two books. So I believe they're New York Times best-selling books. And he just has basically been going around the world shooting dogs. I believe he said it's close to 40,000 dogs. And he's amassed a huge following on Instagram. About 4 million people follow the Dogist. And for those of you who haven't seen it, anyone with a dog in New York and a good portion of the US, I'm sure, knows of the Dogist. It's a huge account. And he really humanizes the dogs. He gets on their level and really has a connection with them through his images. We have a special connection with dogs, and it's one of those things. I think scientists and they research it, and people write books about it, and there's all this data. But at the end of the day, it's something very emotional that we share with our fellow beings. And me personally, I'm a huge dog lover. Anybody that listens to the show, they know this, and Elias is as well. And that's why I think he followed this passion project of shooting dogs and really bringing their story to the forefront. How the whole thing developed was he essentially got laid off, and he just thought, how am I going to turn this this negative into a positive? How am I going to really follow a passion that I love? And one thing led to another, and he decided to start shooting dogs and just see if this can really be as successful as he thought it would be. And it turned out that his gamble was a good one, because it turned out to be very successful. Like I said, this has taken him around the world. He's been on national TV, selling books, and really now is growing the brand into, who knows, the sky's the limit. He can really take it in so many different directions. So I had a blast. Every time I can talk about dogs for an hour or two or three or the whole day, I'm a happy pup. So I had a really fun time talking to Elias. And yeah, go follow him if you don't already. It's the Dogist. I'll put all the information in the show notes. And yeah, I mean, if there's one thing you can take from this podcast, is you just have to keep grinding. Just keep doing whatever it is that you love doing. Follow that passion. That's what he did, and that's what he's still doing. And he spent hours and hours and hours just scouring the streets, looking for those perfect dogs or looking for that perfect image. And he's been doing that for years and many, many hours each day, 7 days a week. So whatever your passion is, listen to the podcast, listen to what Elias did, and just copy that, or take from that what you want and make it your own. But I do think this podcast has a lot of value for people who want to pursue their passion. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. And like always, just rate, subscribe, review the podcast. Really appreciate it, guys. And if you have any questions, anything you want to let me know, just my email's in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. So without further ado, here is this week's guest, Elias Weiss Friedman, aka the Dogist. Enjoy.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
And we're live. Hey, Elise, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Roy?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I've been, following your work for many years now. And as a dog lover, it's fun to see another dog lover. And I think I was almost one of the, I don't want to say one of the first ones, because there were still probably hundreds of thousands of people that were following you at the time. But this was prior to you having millions of followers like you do now. So to see that growth,
you're one of the early adopters. You were before I became super famous. No, I'm not.
Well, you have 4 million followers on the Dogist. Is that the biggest dog/animal account on Instagram?
I think it's one of them. I mean, I certainly like walking around New York. I have managed to create a little reputation for myself. It's like, oh, you're the Dogist guy.
Yeah.
My my buddy's dog was featured. Yeah, everyone has like a little Dogist story.
Yeah, I mean, we used to live on Sullivan Street, so it was just on Washington Square Park. And a lot of the photos would be dogs in
Yeah,
that area, in the vicinity, like in the dog park or in the Washington Square Park or in just different areas, maybe like Greenwich or the West Village. And my wife would always and we just got a dog. We just adopted a dog. What was it? 6 years ago was our second dog, and she would always be walking the two dogs and be like, "Oh, I wish I could see the dogist. I wish I could see the dog."
right.
She wanted like a
Yeah.
picture.
That's part of the fun is that there's like this mystery,
Yeah,
uh,
who is he?
like the Batman effect. Where is he? Who is he? Why has my dog not been chosen?
My dog's the cutest. I don't get it. But I mean, is there some sound? I mean, it must be nice to have that anonymity in a way, right? Because most people, if they have 4, 5, 10 million Instagram followers, for the most part, people know their face. They get recognized on the street. But for you, it's mostly you shooting dogs, and I think majority of people probably don't know what you look like.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed sort of being behind the camera. Um, I it's not that I don't have an ego in any way, but I don't feel like I want to be like known for myself. I want to be like known for my work. Um, and as a photographer, it feels good to be invisible a lot of the time, where you're kind of walking around and you get to sort of decide when you want to like snap into action and be and like turn it on and turn it off. And so I've always enjoyed that versus, the idea of being, if you had known what I looked like, then you maybe if I'd walk by, you'd be like, hey, you're the Dogist guy, and like, could you like photograph my dog? Hold on, let me get him or something. I don't know. I like that sort of feeling of invisibility, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine initially. So, I mean, maybe before we get into the whole dog stuff, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, background, where'd you grow up?
Yeah. So I grew up in suburbs of Philadelphia, and I'm one of three. I have a brother and a sister, and but yeah, we had dogs growing up. We had two Labrador retrievers, and my extended family had a bunch of dogs, poodles, and other labs. And my dad had a dark room in the house, so I started like you know getting into photography when I was maybe 10 or something, and I was like shy as a kid, so the dogs are always like the thing I wanted to take pictures of because they were so, they would sit and they would just be great models. And I thought they were hilarious, which they certainly were, as I remember them. Ruby and Matilda. And so yeah, I sort of started there, but this was before social media. And my parents are physicians, so it wasn't like I was like, I'm going to be a dog photographer. That's sort of like a lot of people have these sort of like dreams or if only thoughts. But then I went to school. I went to Boston University, and then I moved to New York. I was like, I always planned to move to New York, but and I worked in brand strategy at an agency. Just sort of doing something that was interesting, but not necessarily something I wanted to like commit my entire career to. So that was great. And in working, helping big companies tell their story, you sort of learn how like companies should communicate, how brands should speak. And then when I was let go from my job, which was another blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big layoff of 40 people, and I was like, one day I was like, shit. But then the next day I was like, okay, now I can finally like pick something instead of just following the sort of what's expected, after elementary school, you go to middle school and high school and college and your first job and then
Marriage,
marriage.
kids,
And yeah, you're all just kind of like, there's no like moment to pause and maybe pivot. But I'd always, like I said, been in photography, and I had a bunch of like small businesses growing up. So I was always entrepreneurial, and my mom was entrepreneurial. um, so I was like, at 25, I had this sort of moment or about, basically a year to sort of experiment and figure out what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I, I sort of just, I started doing a show called Barking at Dogs, where we'd interview people's dogs on world news, kind of like this. No, it was like a web comedy series, and we'd walk around New York and like stop people, and I had like my buddy would host it. It was just like really, really wacky, and I would get them to bark, and then we would subtitle in what they were saying.
Oh, that's
That
hilarious.
it was hilarious. It's still up there, barkingatdogs.com. I've always wanted to bring it back.
I always had an idea of doing a show, something similar, where like you would subtitle the dogs like what they were thinking. I always thought that was hilarious. I used to have a friend, and we used to go to the beach in the morning and watch the old people walk, and we would just subtitle between ourselves
Right.
what they're saying to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
Like,
I didn't think other people would be interested in that type of humor, but apparently they are.
I know. Well, now it's very popular. People like will dub what they're like dog thoughts, basically.
Yeah.
But so that was sort of how I transitioned to like doing dog stuff in New York City. But it was very, very silly, and that was great. But videos kind of takes a while to produce, and I saw that on Instagram. There's sort of like this daily feed and sort of snapshots, and then I saw what like the Sartorialist was doing. He does like street fashion in New York, and Humans of New York was doing Brandon Stanton. And I was like, no one's doing it for dogs. Like, wouldn't it be funny if there's something like basically the Dogist, the Sartorialist, the Dogist?
Yeah.
And I just started in 2013 with like a French bulldog in New York City, and well, actually, the first photo I posted was a boxer that I met in Austria on a trip. It was sort of like a build up to the whole like moment of starting it. But basically realizing that I could have these funny encounters with dogs and end up with a photograph that sort of tells a little story and is like a little bit humorous and have a simple caption style like the Sartorialist does, just like Houston and Bond Street, or whatever, spotted here.
Yeah.
So that was 6 years ago, and it got traction very quickly. Like I'd started it in October of 2013, and then by December it was like getting picked up by Huffington Post, and it was a good time to start things on Instagram. And I was using a DSLR camera and uploading instead of just using my iPhone. So I was just sort of like, I got that right, and dogs are, one of the strongest internet currencies. You know what I mean? Like
Definitely.
Everyone loves dogs, or at least most people do. And pictures of them are like gold. And I've always, I always knew that growing up. I was always taking pictures of dogs anyway. And I just sort of recognized that there was a great project to do that no one was doing well. Other people were doing it a little bit, sort of like Dogs of New York or whatever. But I was the one out wearing knee pads and taking like so many pictures and on the ground and just sort of like making it just, I don't know, just putting a lot of effort into it and taking it very seriously. Something that on the surface doesn't seem very serious, right? Like dogs don't want their pictures taken.
Yeah.
The whole thing was a joke. And, to me in the beginning, it's like, wouldn't it be funny to make it seem like dogs want their pictures taken in the same way. People are so vain on Instagram that and they post themselves. So what if dogs? I made it seem like dogs are doing the same thing. Because I'm really good at making the dog seem like he's looking into the camera, which it is, but the dog doesn't know that it's a camera. He's just sort of looking at me.
Yeah, as like a squeaky
At the ball, exactly. At the
noise.
ball or the treat, or he thinks I'm some strange one-eyed animal. So that sort of anthropomorphization, where it feels like the dog knows, really plays to our funny bone and our just we love seeing dogs, just like we're saying, dogs that speak or think things, human thoughts. It sort of plays on that same idea. So that was sort of what differentiated what I was doing, and then the rest was kind of like history. Like, you just kept getting press, and walking around New York City, meeting people's dogs. The owners of these dogs are oftentimes connected people. They're New York professional people, and they're, oh, I work here, my buddy. So it just sort of like spread like that organically as well.
Yeah.
And then I got a book deal in 2015 and had a second book in 2017. And here I am, about 40,000 dogs photographed later, about 7 years into it. And, in a lot of ways, I feel like we're just getting started about what we could be doing, trying to scale the, make the dog stories bigger, because, I'm good at sort of having these moments with people in New York, and I travel around the world and sort of have these, a lot of it ends up being very light, right? Like, oh, my dog, he chases rabbits and he's never gotten one, but blah, blah, blah. And it's like this nice little break from reality. But oftentimes these stories end up being very profound, especially, dogs that have jobs and are service dogs and search and rescue, and, dogs that are in need around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of working on figuring out how to reach those types of stories and spend more time on them, and mix in with the sort of light, humorous stuff, something that's a little bit more, a little deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot to unpack there. I think the interesting part is it seems that from an early age you had this either an obsession or just an affinity to dogs, and like you said, you grew up with them, and I think that's something that probably a lot of people share, because it's part of the family. But you had that intersection where you got laid off and you turned a negative into a positive, and then there was this evolution of the Dogist idea, right, that eventually came to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
But were you thinking of it as, this is like a good business idea, or, hey, this is just something that I love, and let me see if there's something that I can do with this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I didn't want to be was like a struggling artist, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always wanted to be artistic. A lot of people feel that way. Like, oh, I want to be a performer, or I want to be an athlete, or I want to be, photographer. And a lot of people, the part of it is like, how do I make a living doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't good enough as a tennis player to be a professional tennis player, and I wasn't a good enough musician to be a musician. And I was a decent photographer, but I didn't really see how initially how I didn't want to do like weddings. I didn't want to do that. So basically, I think I recognized that through creating an audience and through social media, there would be opportunities to like like make money and create a business out of it. Even if it wasn't clear to me in the very beginning, like I definitely knew that it would work. Like from day one, I knew that it would be a thing, and that I didn't start making money until like a year or so into it, when some brands were like, "Hey, we want to work with you on some things," and so it's just sort of evolved naturally. Like I didn't overthink that part, you know. Um, I think you know if you have a good idea and you are consistent about executing it, um, social media is like this whole space that affords you a big voice potentially, and a lot of people will give who have an idea that is maybe a good idea but don't have um, the drive to push through to make it happen, or at least not don't have it today. They'll say, "Oh well, it's hard to grow on Instagram," and now that's true. But now it's easy to grow on TikTok and other. There's always some new thing, disruption in technology that people can jump on. And
Well, they're potentially banning TikTok in the US now.
really,
Yeah, there's talks because they just did it in India, and there were some talks of banning TikTok now in China,
right?
now in the US.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but you know, I think there's like tons of opportunity with the internet to showcase what you do really well. And in my case, it happens to be photographing dogs. But what I do is not it's sort of a knack. It's not like I have some special ability. I'm just sort of very committed to becoming. I was very committed to becoming the best dog photographer, um, and through the last 7 years, I've definitely established myself as some sort of like I developed a knack for it, and I've gotten good at it, but I you never stop learning about the way light works and how to interact with people, and I just started doing studio photography, and I feel pretty amateurish about that. So it just you just keep growing.
Yeah. I mean, street photography and studio photography, that's it's a completely different animal.
Totally.
Because originally I came to the U.S. and it was under a student visa, so I was studying photography for a while, and again, I would go out on the streets, and it would be very intimidating, especially New York. It's such a big city, and everyone's busy, everyone's in a rush, and if you get and if you have a project, you have to shoot people. It's like, oh Jesus, that's so terrifying. Like walking up to people, and but I didn't really connect to the studio photography aspect of it, like the fashion, or like you said, like other studio projects. It just, I don't know, I didn't like it as much. I like being outside, but it is very intimidating to approach people, especially in a city like New York. When you first started approaching people, was it something that it took you a while? Was it intimidating? Because I mean, I'm assuming half the work is the dogs is one thing, but half the work is approaching someone, saying, "Hey, can you stop
Yeah.
what you're doing, and can I shoot you? And don't worry, I'm not some crazy."
Yeah, it does seem like that is a hang up for a lot of people, right? It's sort of um, approaching people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that, I guess there was that initial hurdle in the beginning where I was like, am I really going to approach people asking to photograph their dogs wearing knee pads and like do this whole thing? And as soon as I started doing it, as soon as I got that like first two, then I was like, this is easy. Like this is like another thing is that dog people are walking a dog that are walking a dog. It's like the best excuse to stop someone. Like you're stopping to pet their dog anyway. It's like they're walking around with a you know, this adorable animal. How could you not stop them?
Yeah.
So, like what other street photographers do, like Humans of New York, or Elsa's jumping all over the place. My dog. What they do is, in a way, more of an approach, because they're going cold with that. They're not stopping people with dogs. They have a different skill. But yeah, I think at this point it's just automatic for me, and I get rejected uh, sometimes, and that's just part of it. And I think living in New York, you sort of gain a resilience to people, um, any negativity that people give you, whether they call you an asshole or whatever. You just kind of keep going and don't think, and if someone with their dog says no, then there's another dog right down the block. And it's not the dog that said no, it's the person that said no. And I'm not
Yeah.
interested in the person as much. I am, but more focused on the dog, obviously.
So, I mean, initially, I'm assuming people were more hesitant, but now, once people
Yeah.
either recognize you or maybe you tell them you're the Dogist, are they jumping
Yeah.
at the opportunity?
Well, I think in the beginning it seemed more crazy, like the concept of like, well, what do you, where's this going, or something, like who does this? Like the concept of like a social media influencer.
Mm-hmm.
But now, a lot of people ask people to stop their dogs to photograph them. I think once they say yes, and I'm very sort of fluid with the way I'm doing it, and I like have a camera on my hip, and I'm like know exactly what I'm doing. The ball comes out, the toy comes out, and then they're like, "Oh shit! Like this guy is like serious," or I wasn't expecting this. Then, and a lot of the times I'm not paying attention to their expression when they see me doing. I'm not looking at them at that point. But I think a lot of people are kind of like a little puzzled. But also, I think people, because I've been doing this for a while now, will think, "Oh, it's the Dogist guy," and they'll say that. I say, "Are you the Dogist?" And I say, "Yes," but I'm already like in the zone. I don't really want to discuss that quite yet.
Yeah.
Once I'm finished with the dog, because those first moments with the dog and its reaction to me doing my noises and everything, those are often like the best pictures. So I want to like sort of have that moment with the dog, get like 20-30 frames, and then I can start having a conversation with the person and get into it then. But I don't lead with, "Hey, I'm the Dogist. Can I take a photo of your dog?" I don't give them the card until afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I want to sort of preserve, like I was saying before, that invisibility, that sort of like impromptu, spur of the moment. The dog sees you as this sort of like random stranger, and this, strange animal has appeared in my life all of a sudden. And that is sort of, you get a lot of interesting expressions when you have that in the beginning.
Do you look for a certain expression for, like, how do you end up choosing? You're shooting 30-40 pictures of this dog. Is there a certain look that you're going for? Is it something maybe that's more compatible with what best represents them? Like maybe if they're a funny looking dog, you want a funny expression. Maybe if it's a serious dog, you want like a serious looking expression, or something different.
Yeah. Well, I guess in terms of which dogs I stop, I'm just sort of looking for something that stands out a little bit. Whether it's that they're an interesting breed, or have an interesting pattern on their coat, or they have one eye, or they have three legs, or whatever it is, something they just have like something that stands out. And it's, if you're walking around, you notice the same things.
Yeah.
I have a little bit more of I can recognize certain nuances a little bit better than the average person, but, and then, I know that certain breeds react in certain ways, like golden retrievers smile. They do. and bulldogs want to like get really close to you. They like, they want to pull and they want to get right next to you. And other sort of dogs have this inquisitive look, or are scared, or so I might have some preconceptions about how the dog will react, but a lot of the time I have no idea, and that's part of the fun of it, is just sort of like, seeing what happens. And then I'll take, a bunch of frames, and if the dog is being really like static, sort of like not moving or being expressive, then I'll take fewer frames. But if they're kind of bouncing around, they're doing this, doing that, then I'm sort of taking a frame. I'm taking a burst for each sort of expression.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get the eye contact basically to be like right through the lens as close as possible, because that's sort of, like I said, one of my signatures. If you're talking to a person and they're looking at your forehead, you'll know, right?
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like really unnerving, right? So we're really good at knowing like whether the dog or a person is looking at them or not at them, and that makes all the difference. So that's really important, is that the dog is looking at me, at the viewer, so that it's sort of, you get that effect of where it seems like the dog knows that it's having its picture taken. And then, I'm having a conversation with the person afterwards about their dog, get a little story. And then sometimes when I'm editing images, I'll choose an image that sort of, I'm choosing images that stand out, but then if the story aligns, if the story is goofy, or there is a little bit of a juxtaposition of the image versus this that pairs with the story.
Mhm.
So, if the dog, it, like I said, the whole thing is in a lot of ways like a big joke. So if the dog has a really goofy story, like he ate $100 bill and pooped it out intact, then maybe I'll choose like a more serious picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then just the juxtaposition ends up being funnier, because it's like he's trying so hard to be taken seriously, and yet he does silly things like that. So
That's funny. I think
that plays, yeah.
people don't realize the amount of effort certain things take, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's thought that goes into that. There's all these different things. There's how you frame it. There's looking for the dog. There's spending, X amount of hours outside. I think people, when a lot of times when they see a finished product, they'll just assume, oh, you just snapped a picture of a dog and you put it online, and they don't
Right.
understand like all the nuance that you just told us. I
Totally.
mean,
Yeah.
what's a typical day for you? Wandering the sheets looking for dogs to shoot. Do you have like a process you follow,
Um,
or like how many
I-
hours do you spend outside looking for dogs to shoot?
yeah. I mean, the process is sort of like, and now the process is a little different because I have a dog for the first time, which is great.
Very cute
Um,
dog, by the way. I can see it.
yeah.
I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a husky I got during quarantine, rescued from Texas. But yeah, you know, I they're kind of like, baseball cards with, the dog pictures, where I'll have a stack of them and collect them, and any given day I'll sort of like flip through and like, oh, like this would, I posted a Labrador yesterday, like why don't we post a poodle today, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then when I want when I want to sort of refresh, like add more to the deck, and like, oh, like I want to shoot today. Like there's good light today. I'm not busy with something else. Um, I want to go to this park. Then I'll sort of gear up. I have the whole like outfit, and then just head out and sort of just see what I come across. That's like part of the adventure, and end up, like a big day would be like 10 dogs. That would be like a lot. And but then like throughout the week, like if I'm walking Elsa, she sneezed. If I'm walking Elsa to the dog park, then I usually have my camera on me at all times. And if I see something that sort of like something I just have to get, like a little puppy or something, just stands out, then I'll get that dog. But that's like one dog a day at that point, or two dogs. And so I like to just sort of, over the years, I think I've gotten more particular where, you know, um, it's not, I want the dog and something, whether it's that the owner just like has this cool outfit on, or like the background, like the street is just like a really cool street. There's like a scene, just something that where it's not, it's a little bit more dynamic than just the dog. So that will like sort of spark something in me, inspire me into action. And so yeah, that's sort of like the process. It changes, if I'm traveling, then I'm shooting more dogs just because I like, if I'm going to, Rome or something, not right now, but
Definitely not.
but I was there. That was my latest European trip.
Was it this year?
No, it was last summer, I think. But I'll be like out shooting every day from like in the morning, just trying to like cover as many things as possible because I'm only there for a selected amount of shorter period of time.
Yeah.
So that sort of ends up being more intense. Whereas when I'm shooting in the city, in New York City where I live, there's more of a romantic, artistic process to it, if you will, where I'm just sort of more waiting for that special like situation and be like, oh my God, I have to photograph this, or like, whatever it is, it's like a dog in a bag or just something that is a great picture.
You have the luxury of time in New York. You don't have to compress it all into a week or whatever it is.
Exactly. I can be a little bit more picky about it. And New York is also, you can be more picky because it's so, um, it's so spontaneous and unpredictable, and everyone's walking in a small, Manhattan is not that big. So, if I'm trying to photograph a dog near the Coliseum, then there aren't many dogs that hang out there. So any dog, I'm waiting. Like if I remember I was in the Coliseum and I was there for literally like 2 hours, just standing there waiting to see if, and like one dog says, yeah, and I don't always speak the language, so like some people will just like walk away, like no, no, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn.
Crazy American.
Right, but then after 2 hours, finally, like I get this dog, and it ends up being this like great picture of like this like little Chihuahua that was like snarling, growling at me. But in New York, there's a lot more percolating all the time, so I can be a little more picky about, well, not this dog for this picture, but I'll wait for the next dog to come because you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
would you say New York? Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was and if I can't do it, if I can't get the picture with this building today, then I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, Definitely, that makes sense. New York is. I mean, would you say New York's one of the most dog-friendly cities you've been in out of all
Yeah,
the places you've traveled?
I would say it's one of the most dog friendly. There are many dog friendly cities. You know, San Francisco is extremely dog friendly. Um, Portland, Seattle. Um,
Because I know in Europe, I've been to a few places in Europe, and I forget where this was. I think it was Germany. Yeah, I was in some coffee shop. Might have been Munich. I can't remember exactly, but there was this massive Great Dane just literally in the table next to us, and his face was like an inch away from my espresso.
yeah,
Like here in the U.S., I don't even know. They won't even let him in the coffee shop, but at least the owner would move him away. And the owner was like super nonchalant about it. He didn't care, and I didn't care either. And the dog was super relaxed. And I was like, this is great, man. This I
yeah,
wish it was like this everywhere.
yeah. No, I've bounced around Europe a good bit, and um, their relationship they have with dogs is different and awesome
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Germany is awesome. They, one of the things is that um, the there's a lot of like bad breeding in the States. You know what I mean? Like sort of people who are just doing it in their backyard or puppy mills. You know, not to make any like sort of broad statements about Americans and consumerism and sort of seeing dogs as accessories, but there's a little bit of that where there's like a lot of dogs in shelters, whereas it seems like in lots of Europe they're more um, they're better about that.
Yeah.
They don't see the dog as like a disposable. They take it more seriously, and there are probably more rules about breeding. You know, so the relationship that people in Europe have with their dogs is like a little bit. They're a little bit. It seems like they're more like integrated into society, where like they are allowed in the cafes, and you get these sort of like striking breeds, like a Great Dane that's just kind of like hanging out randomly, and that's cool to see. Like and like I was in Switzerland, and they have these like beautiful rare breeds that are just kind of they just sort of fit with this beautiful scenery, and you can see how they sort of like created this dog to live here. It just sort of like fits in, um, and I don't know. That's kind of cool to see that the different ways that there are like different dog scenes in different parts of the world. London's a very dog friendly place. I was there. Um,
Tel
yeah,
Aviv.
Tel Aviv is awesome too, and Tel Aviv is all about mixed breed dogs, and um, they have a lot of huskies there, and
It's weird, right? Because it's such a hot country.
yeah, I know, right? Well, they're husky people. I mean, I have a husky now, but I think she's like a mix. Um, but yeah, it I think the culture speaks to like the type of dogs people end up with in a lot of ways.
Are there certain dogs that you haven't been able to shoot yet that you want to shoot? Maybe like a Kangal dog, right? That I think they have them mostly in Turkey, or
What kind of dog?
Kangal, like a Turkish Mastiff.
Oh, I haven't.
Maybe I'm not pronouncing it. It's like this. I think it's like it has the strongest bite out of any dog.
Really?
It's this.
I don't
Yeah,
know if I've heard of that.
it's a herding dog. They're massive. They're like 150 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, there's so many dogs, right? There's that
Yeah.
Mexican dog. I'm not even going to pronounce it right, but it's like that hairless dog,
A Sholo eats quaintly.
something like that.
They call them Sholos. Yeah, it's like a
Hello?
Peruvian dog or a Mexican hairless dog.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, are these type of dogs where you're like, oh, I'd love to shoot that one day?
not really off the top of my head. I have like the dog encyclopedia, and there are certainly a number of breeds in there that are very obscure, and like I'm sure they have some like a few breeders in Europe or in different parts of the world, but for the most part, there are like maybe 50 or so like very popular breeds. I'd say even fewer
Yeah.
that you just see way more often than anything that's like super rare. And I certainly know all those breeds and have photographed all those breeds. You know, every year that I go to the dog show, like Westminster or whatever, you see breeds that are you see however many breeds they have there, maybe 100.
Those people
Um,
are a little crazy.
yeah, so some of them end up being like very rare, but even still, you occasionally see them. Whereas there are a lot of varieties of hunting dogs that are like very particular and hybrids and of other types of dogs that have evolved over the years from breeding. Um, so you know, I think what's interesting is going to various parts of the world that have like indigenous dogs
Yeah.
or like street dogs. Like I went to Puerto Rico 2 years ago, and they have sort of a local style of dog, and they call them satos. Um, and my brother, we ended up doing fostering one of the puppies, and my brother now has him.
Oh, really?
His name is Finn. Yeah,
Oh,
but there's
I know that. Yeah.
keeping
There's an
Finn.
Instagram. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So there's just sort of like, and that dog Finn is very sort of is a perfect example of like a sato, like
Super cute.
a medium-sized brown dog with a sickle tail that goes up,
Yeah.
and that's just that is basically like a breed, right? There, it's not there's not like someone is like maintaining some breed standard about it, but that to me is like an example of a healthy, uh, good-looking, interesting dog that just sort of evolves to survive in a certain area. In this case, Puerto Rico.
Hmm.
Um, So that to me is super interesting. Whereas like a lot of people are now breeding these like designer dogs, um, mini Aussies and Doodles and all the crossbreeds, which are um, serve, I guess, a purpose, which is to be cute and appeal to people who want something easy, I guess. And but that to me is a little bit less interesting in a cultural way. It's a little more basic, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, uh, we've basically engineered dogs over thousands of years, and I think if you look at a lot of the pure, pure breeds that are out there, we designed them over hundreds of years to just to fit a certain role or to service in a certain way, and we didn't think about health consequences for them. And a lot of these dogs, unfortunately, are they have shorter lifespans, they have health issues, from not breathing well to heart conditions to joint conditions. I feel like the mixed breed dogs tend to be much healthier and with less health problems than the full
Right.
breed.
Yeah, I mean, inherently, basically, whenever you're trying to breed dogs to conform to a breed standard, then you're inbreeding,
Yeah.
and that has health, genetic repercussions. And a lot of the best breeders of purebred dogs are paying a lot more attention to that, making trying to diversify their gene pool. Um, and with breeding programs, but most breeders, well, I don't know what the statistic would be like, but a lot of breeders are not doing that and are just trying to sort of sell dogs when that you sort of call them puppy mills. So yeah, um, dogs that evolve more naturally, if you will, like indigenous dogs that are just there's sort of a more natural evolution where the traits that are good for their health are the ones that keep them around. They end up with a healthier dog. And if you have a mutt, then the genes are more diverse and there's less of that negative genetics happening.
I mean, my dog is a pit bull pointer boxer mix, and I'm assuming because I saw his mother and she was a pit bull boxer mix, and no idea who the father is, but he looks like a pointer, so I'm assuming the father was a pointer, and he's 13 years old,
Wow.
healthier than most 6-year-olds. Like he's got the same energy, same
Yeah,
everything. Like he hasn't lost a
he's
step.
been a great dog.
Yeah. He's an amazing dog.
That's
Well, I
awesome.
mean, you've been around like we said, like a lot of places. What do you think the most popular dog in New York is, and is it more like per borough, or how do you think? Like maybe
Hmm.
pit bulls are very popular in I'm in Brooklyn. I have a pit bull. I see a lot of pit bulls.
Yeah. Um, I think there is some the dogs that are available in the New York area shelters. A lot of them end up being pit bulls,
Yeah,
um, because there's a lot of uh, bad breeding. There's a lot of people breeding pit bulls, unfortunately, and those people end up being um, irresponsible, and then the dog ends up in a shelter. So that's that. Um, there's an overflow of these dogs. There's a lot of these dogs. Whereas in the South, you have hunters who are discarding their hunting dogs after a season. So that's why you see a lot of hound dogs in the South. And so certain rescue groups a lot of rescue groups end up pulling dogs from different parts of the country. So you see, and New York ends up being the sort of melting pot of dogs from everywhere. Um, So in a way, like the way that dogs end up finding their homes, um, and the dogs people end up choosing is sort of a result of the shelters in the area, you
yeah.
know. And there are certainly a lot of purebred dogs in the city as well. And you might say that, well, what are the most popular breeds? Labradors, golden retrievers, now the doodles and everything.
Frenchies.
Frenchies, good apartment dogs, um, dogs that are available, and there's a lot of um, those breeders are they're around the East Coast, um, so that's sort of how I see. Then I guess you could say there's some nuances in terms of culturally within the city. You know, one of the things is like if you go on the Upper East Side, you'll see two golden doodles. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we wanted two.
Yeah, it's a brother
Um,
and sister.
and um, and then all around the city, you see Frenchies, of course, because they do make great apartment dogs and they're cute, and then you can pick them up and put them in the bag and stick them in a taxi and bring them to the subway,
Yeah,
and they don't require so much exercise throughout the day. Um, and yeah, and then you could say that if there's some cult, in Brooklyn, you have a lot of younger people, um, and if they're probably going to adopt a dog because it's a noble thing to do. Um, it's easier than like going to drive somewhere to like pick up a dog in the middle of nowhere.
yeah.
And um, so yeah, there's like a lot of mixes, and like you're saying, pit mixes and hound dogs. My buddy just got some like beagle mix puppy. And of course, everyone now, because of quarantine and the pandemic, is like everyone's getting a dog.
Yeah, everyone wants a
I have
friend.
a dog. All my friends are getting dogs, which is great. Um, as long as the pendulum doesn't swing back after this is over, and people are like, the shelters are emptying out a little bit, which is great. But hopefully they won't fill up again when everyone's going back to work, and you know priorities change.
Well, it seems like this could be the new norm for a while.
Yeah,
Working from home, and I think even when some offices reopen, it seems like at least the at least the tech scene and a few other industries are very content with people working from home. It seems like it saves them money. People are being just as
yeah,
productive and efficient. So this just Corona might have just
yeah.
started a new working from home industry. Who knows?
Right, which is great news for dogs.
Yeah,
I
it's great news for
mean,
me too.
right. I've been working that way for the last 6 years.
That's awesome.
Working from home basically, and like I have a small team now, but we've always worked remotely.
Yeah.
Um, so um, so yeah, interesting times, and it's great that people now that are getting dogs are choosing to adopt dogs. It's certainly, you know, it's it's more interesting. It's more interesting and a unique experience. I found from doing it myself. Um, like Elsa is she's like a husky mix, and came from Texas, and um, like I couldn't have predicted that. Like I grew up with Labradors, so in the back of my mind, I'm always like, oh well, I guess if I were to get a dog, I would choose something like a retriever. But she just ended up in my life, and I love that she's in my life, and that's like a more that the story to me, and that feeling is sort of more special, um, even if it was less predictable. People tend to want predictability. They say, well, if I want a dog, I want this specific dog, and I want to buy this dog, and I know where to buy this dog, and I can just pick a day and go and make it happen. But I don't know, this sort of willingness to consider more of an adventure is a nice thing to see in people.
Well, there's like a blanket statement as if, if they pick a Labrador or a Pit Bull or a Frenchie, that it's just one type of
Right.
thing, right? Like they don't have individuality. Like if you pick a Frenchie, they all have these certain traits and personality, and they're going to be X, Y, Z. And I think when people think that sometimes, and then they don't get that because again, there's individuality in some dog. My pit bull, like pit bulls are supposed to be energetic, and my pit bull just wants to sleep all day. She like does she barely wants to do anything. So you just have that, and
Yeah. I mean,
people realize that you're not going to necessarily get what you think, but just go get a dog that you connect with, and that dog's going to be amazing. Doesn't matter the breed.
right. No, I think, people just have a natural tendency to project thoughts onto things.
Hmm.
It makes the world easier. We're obviously seeing that happen right now with all the racial inequality conversations happening right now. So yeah, like um, people see certain dogs, and they try and um, project their opinions about what that dog is like before actually getting to know the dog. But in my experience, that while there's dogs um, have certain tendencies, like I said, golden retrievers smile, and golden retriever will want to retrieve the ball more than a Shiba Inu might. Um, but that's just one. That's just like a tendency. Um, you know, Elsa is a husky, and she the huskies like to run, and that's true that she does like to run, but she also she's not really an escape artist, which a lot of huskies are. And I mean, I'm still getting to know her, but a lot of the times you see like the dogs that seems out of control is like a Labrador walking down the street. Like not what people want to think about Labradors necessarily.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you're looking to get a dog, definitely be open minded. Um, Also be aware that these dogs have been bred to have certain tendencies. So you know if I'm sure what's your dog's name?
Well, two. I have the old one's Taco and the younger one's Shasta.
Taco and Shasta.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're big dogs, right?
Yeah. Taco's probably 50 pounds and Shasta's like 70, 72.
And is he and would you say that that Taco would be a good dog for anyone, or would you say that
Anyone.
maybe not for everyone?
Anyone. Both of them.
Anyone,
Yeah,
right?
especially Shasta because I mean she's a pit bull and she literally gets along with like I think she's barked like twice in her life. She
Right.
literally never growls. She's so docile and submissive. She would be a great for a pet for a house with kids, with babies, with other animals.
Right. Right. So that's probably most of the time you get dogs that are well mannered. I just think you know if you're looking for a dog, make sure that you're going to be the best owner for it, as well as it being the best dog for you. Like
100%.
if a bigger, stronger dog has the potential to pull, right?
Hmm.
So if you're not prepared to um, work with a dog that is strong, then get a Chihuahua.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every dog has a good dog, and it can be the best dog for someone.
Exactly.
Um, and I think it's important to make sure that the match is good. People, like I said, people will have something in their mind, and then they'll say, "Oh, like German Shepherds are gorgeous," and German Shepherds are like working breed dogs, and they need to have something to do.
Hmm.
And if you are not the person to give the dog what it needs, then it will not be a good situation.
100%. 100%.
you know?
Yeah. You have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
It's a long-term
Luckily,
relationship.
Elsa is pretty easy.
Yeah, she seems pretty chill. She's just not doing too much, just chilling.
Are you breaking up a little bit?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, the brand, social media. Um, there's millions of accounts out there and they're all shooting dogs and cats and otters and squirrels and foxes and every other animal under the sun. How do you think why do you think that you're kind of ahead of the pack? What separates you from the rest of them? And did you think it would be as big as it is today?
Huh. I in a way I did think it would be as big as it is today. Um, I think that
That's so refreshing to hear.
yeah. I mean, I don't. I think I would have been surprised at a number of things that have happened. Like being like a New York Times bestselling author was sort of crazy to me.
Yeah.
Um, and just sort of like the number of dogs that I've photographed. But it is not surprising to me that people love great pictures of dogs. and learning about dog stories. That's sort of like the mission, is like the story of dogs. So that there's nothing to me that's surprising about like, and it's also the story of New York, which is another very fascinating thing. So you're taking like this formula of like extremely entertaining subject matter, it's often funny, they're beautiful, they're um, in an area that is like everyone around the world wants to go to, and the people holding the leash are often like have something very like pithy and funny to say. There's something, they're like well spoken a lot of the time. They'll say something good. So you put all that together and you do it every day for you do you do that 40,000 times or whatever, thousands of times, then that's a recipe for something. Um, and so that's the result of what I've done for the last 7 years, is sort of create this sort of big project that never ends. And no two dogs I've met are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And dogs are they're evergreen too. Like you'll never get tired of like meeting new dogs. It's not like, oh, I met a dog last week, I'm good. It's just sort of like this. Dogs have we have a special relationship with them, and that they're so like pure, and you always assume they're good, unlike people, where people are kind of very judgmental about each other, and they're like cliquey, and um, have their defenses up a little bit. Not with everyone, but how many people would you say are your like close friends? Like not that many.
No, not many.
Right, which is probably typical, but um, with dogs, it's like everyone you meet is like, you get like, oh, can I take you home? Like if you could have all of them, you would, maybe,
Probably.
probably. So that's sort of like a special thing. And you wouldn't, and obviously like there's tons of cat people out there too that are obsessed with cats, and I've never had a cat, but I have nothing against cats. Um, but
Cats
maybe,
are nice. They're just not dogs.
right, exactly. They're a little different.
Yeah.
No, and some people would say, I'll take all the cats too, but I think dogs are a little bit more like, they're like, they call them like man's best friend. Like everyone, um, there's just something like extra. Um, they're like extra affectionate.
Yeah. They want to please you.
Yeah, they're very into pleasing you. Exactly.
And cats really couldn't give a shit.
Exactly. So cats are great, but they're not dogs. And so they're just like nothing else like them. Um, you know, I've thought about it every day, and still the answer is the same. Dogs are the best.
They really are. So, I mean, would you say at least half the work is just showing up, just doing it? Because I think a lot of times people fall into this trap of, I want, and I see this with founders as well, starting, new startups. It's like they want to come out with a product that's perfect.
Right.
And a lot of times perfect is subjective, but B, you don't have to come up with the best results straight away. You just have to kind of do it. Just take that risk, take the first step, start doing it, and gradually grow, or in a business, gradually develop your business and make it better. But I think the first step is the most important one. Just go out there and do it.
Yeah, I mean that's something they say a lot. Is like everyone wants to come out with like V V5 or V10 version 10.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work like that. You have to you basically, in order to succeed in as an entrepreneur, or as someone who is like trying to create something, you have to like failure. You don't have to love it. You can love it though. I sometimes love it. But you have to realize that V V5 version 5 of what you're doing
Mhm.
is what happens after version 1, 2, 3, and 4. And
Exactly.
um,
And you have to get to that. You have to see, okay, version 1 didn't work, version 2 didn't work. Oh, version 3, something here did work,
well,
and then
well,
I can build 5.
it's not that they don't work. It's just that they're not what you see other people doing necessarily. Like you see, I see version 5, and if I can't do version 5, then I don't want to do it. It's basically, you know, I think of it as hills and crests, where if you're at stage 1, you're at the bottom of the hill, and you see someone at the top of the hill, and you say, "Well, I could climb this hill, but I don't know what's on the other side. I don't that like that. I don't, if I climb it, then I don't know what's going to happen next, and I'm unwilling to even climb one hill because I'm not going to take that risk. Um, and what if I fail? What if I fall back down? So, in order to get anywhere, doing anything, you have to climb the hill, and then when you're on the top of that hill, then you'll see what's due next at the next hill. But and that crest will be your next set of failures in getting to that next higher thing.
Mhm.
But only when you complete level 1 and 2 can you even see how to get to level 3 or 4. You know what I mean? So people are there's a lot of inertia, especially at the lower levels of anything, where you don't even want to start. You don't even want to get up because you have Netflix, you have your dog, you could go get some food, you can not do that shit. But
Yeah.
and it's not to say that you should do that shit because not
But if you do
everyone.
want to develop, it's outside your comfort zone. That is
Right.
what
Well,
happens.
if people shouldn't feel like they have to do something because it's like exciting, maybe they're not meant to be doing. They're not cut out for it. Maybe they don't have that. Um, it's not what they should. It's not their strength to be everyday entrepreneurial and like self-driven and loving failure. So I think it's what's important is for the people that are kind of close to that, and they are thinking about it, and they just need to like cut a few more little like excuses and like and stop listening to some that need that extra encouragement. Then those are the people that should be listening and being like, screw it. So I was sort of that person, and certain people, like Gary Vaynerchuk, I remember was like, Gary V,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of course. I remember like when I was just starting my project, he's like, do your Smurf blog. You remember that? Where it's like, no matter how weird what you want to do is, like someone will love it,
Yeah.
even if it's like Smurf blog. So like I was like, so the Dogist was originally that was my Smurf blog. At the time, it felt like a Smurf blog because it seemed so strange to like walk around and like stop people and photograph their dog. But lo and behold, dogs are more popular than Smurfs, barely, or at least some. Um, but not to overthink things, and um, if you want to do something, then you have to trek. You have to one step at a time and fail along the way, and you kind of have to rebrand failure as lessons, and the steps necessary. People are so obsessed with not failing, but failure is a good thing.
Well, they're also obsessed with. Unfortunately, all you hear is a success story a lot of times, and it's not even that, right? Like, there's all these people selling you snake oil on the internet, telling you that just sign up for my 5-step program, and I made $50,000 last year sitting from home, and they'll just sell you all this crap. And then when they don't get it through that, which they won't because it's snake oil, and then it's like, all right, well, I tried my hand at entrepreneur,
Right.
and it didn't work, and I'm going to go back to 9 to 5. And nothing's wrong with 9 to 5.
Right.
Some people, that's what they love doing, and they should do. But I just feel like if you do go the entrepreneur route, you should know that it's like that success story that you hear. That's 2 times out of 10, and for the most part, people don't make it, and it's very hard. And you have to. There's a lot of self.
Right. Well, people look for shortcuts everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Oh, get rich quick, or whatever. Like that's something I could make happen so quickly, and all of a sudden, the reality is that everyone who is like a real success has turned what they love into something that's like actually sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Has put in like so much work, and there's just no shortcut. Like if you look at any professional athlete, you think they did like a get good quick program, and like it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So like I said, like if you are the type of person that has that drive, that spirit, then take the encouragement. But if you're the type of person who likes having the more consistent 9 to 5 lifestyle, which is, I think, great for so many people, then you shouldn't, you shouldn't push yourself to do something that you don't think that you don't want in your heart. Yeah.
So what's the next step for the Dogist? What's V11 for Dogist? Are you going to go
I don't know about V11. I would say we're
V100?
No. I would say less. I would say we're at V4 or V5.
I mean, is it a dog line? Is it merchandise, food?
Yeah.
We're expand.
I think what we've achieved so far is, creating a really interesting, fun, sort of big project that has become sort of a cultural thing and almost a New York institution in a way. Like a lot of people know the Dogist or have heard of it. I've been on, national television a few times. And so now we're trying to see if we can, take, the brand and evolve it into something, that's more of like a lifestyle. Like, what does it mean to be like a dog lover and to have this sort of New York, sophisticated, sort of like street style DNA infused into it. And can we create products that people will feel like that represents that they something about themselves that they love. A lot of brands try and imbue their products with that sort of like New Yorkiness in there, or LA, or just some sort of vibe. So we're working on figuring out how to, creating products is a huge pain in the butt. Like you think walking around photographing dogs all day is difficult. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's certainly fun. But creating like products is crazy. Like there's just it's a huge uphill battle, and it's not something that I I'm very familiar with. So my team and I, we sort of are working towards like um, coming out with these sort of limited products um, and figuring out how we can create sort of a company and hire a bunch of people eventually, so that we can the Dogist will sort of transcend me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and be about more than just um, my pictures, but also about like a lifestyle of like, and for people that feel that love their dogs and um, and love New York, and they love good photography, and they love humor, and they love um, sophistication. You know what I mean? That sort of certain like they're into aesthetic as well,
Yeah.
that minimal vibe. So we're constantly winning and failing at certain things, and and that's the whole name of the game.
Yeah, man. I'm a spectator. I'd love to see what you guys come up with next. I think the brand is awesome, and what you've been doing and building over these past few years is it's pretty amazing, man. I mean, if I think my last question would be if there are first time photographers listening, people who love dogs and maybe want to take it up as a hobby or maybe even a little bit more. Do you have any tips for first time photographers that want to get into shooting dogs and maybe even like street photography of dogs?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when it comes to street photography and um, something where you don't need to ask permission from anyone to start doing it. You may if you're taking pictures of people, you might want to ask for their permission to take their photo, but no one's going to stop you walking around with a camera.
Yeah.
Um, I think those first few steps are really important to take, and a lot of people don't ever get to take them. They just sort of think about it, or they'll take pictures in their backyard, but like they won't go into town, or they won't make that first sort of leap.
Hmm.
So if you kind of just um, don't ask anyone for permission, don't say like, "Hey, like, what do you think of this idea?" Or like, ask your parents what they think. Just kind of like throw yourself into it and trust your gut. Be a little bit crazy, so to say.
Yeah.
Then you'll be at that first little hill, on the top of that first little hill, and you're like, oh wow, it wasn't that bad. And then you say, oh, and the next thing to do is to go do the same thing somewhere else. Maybe what I mean, you have to walk forward and take action in what you're doing. Um, Otherwise, you're just pontificating. You're just thinking about something, and that's anyone can think.
Yeah. It's I think that's true for almost anything you do. Just don't overthink things.
Yeah,
Just do
it,
it. Just
it's
go
it's
out and do
it's about there's all these expressions, where the rubber meets the road,
it.
and traction, like literally you have shoes on and you go use them. You know what I mean? Like go
Get
like
some knee pads, get some
yeah,
sneakers.
whatever. Like knee pads have been my like metaphorical like thing that represents the my commitment to it. So whatever it is, find your knee pads. Find
Are they just worn down by now?
Well, yeah, I've gone through a few pairs, and I actually wear them less nowadays because um it's hot, so usually in the winter when I'm wearing long pants, because I wear them under my pants.
Hmm.
But also the new camera I shoot with a mirrorless now,
Okay. The
and
Sony or
a Nikon,
oh,
and the mirror pops out, and so I can now hold the camera lower and view the image
Game changer.
in the same way as I would if I were looking through the viewfinder, like crouched down. So now I don't have to bend. I don't have to kneel on the ground as much anymore. I can crouch and then lower the camera
Makes sense.
a lot more. But I still use, like, if I'm doing an event, definitely knee pads, and during the colder months, it's just easier because I can just more stable. But anyway, those details aside, um, it's like the just do it thing. Just do it.
Just do it, man.
Hurl yourself into the unknown. Walk the walk.
100%. Well, I mean, we were supposed to do an hour, so I want to thank you for taking a little extra time talking to us.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a great time, man. I really
Likewise.
appreciate it. And usually I ask where people can find you, but I think it's pretty evident where people can find you. The Dogist. Yeah, I think everyone knows it by now, especially if you live in New York.
Yeah, thedogist.com or the Dogist on Instagram. My books are in stores anywhere.
Yeah, and I'll put all the links in the show notes, so it makes it easy for everyone to find. And yeah, man, I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much. I had a blast.
Likewise, man. That was great. I get to think about things in new ways every time I talk about the story.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it again in the future.
For sure.
Awesome, man. Take care.
All right, have a good one.